All right. Hey, everybody. This video is going to be um, discussing a tracker sheet that is something that me and Samantha use on a daily basis. It's really helped us improve our recruiting and probably more or less understand the recruiting process, the exposure process from taking someone in your business that is going from not interested to getting them not only interested, but getting them to a point where they want to join you in your business, right? And over the years of being involved, we've started to kind of track every person that we've been able to bring onto our team personally. We track the different type of exposures they went through, the average time frames it took to go through this process, and really started to see some commonalities and some averages that made it a little bit more predictable and allowed us to understand that recruiting someone isn't one necessarily moment or thing that's shared with someone that turns them into yes, or that it's a process or a series of events and information that one goes through that takes them from not interested to being interested in getting involved, right? I think once people understand that there is a process and something that they can follow, they take the pressure off themselves. Where people will beat up on each other, I'm not being a good recruiter, I'm doing something wrong, etc. Be able to go back to a simple tracker sheet to really kind of look at, have I taken them through the process or down the factory line effectively, right? So I have this sheet here, which I know you're not going to be able to really kind of see or understand from the screen, but if you're part of the Next Level team on our private Facebook group, you can go into the file section and see this Class A tracker worksheet. You can reach out to me personally too, and I can send you this worksheet. It's nothing magical. It honestly was initially put together for me just to kind of take everyone that has shown some sort of interest along the way and put it all in one spot so I wouldn't forget it, right? As you start growing your business and more people come to the table that have interest, it's hard to remember everything, right? It's kind of like pouring water into a glass where eventually it's going to just start to overflow, right? And so I did this more as an opportunity to keep everything in one area, but then notice something as I was doing this. And along the sheet, I put a variety of different exposures that I can take someone through, right? So I listed out sampling the product, sending videos, sharing a magazine or some sort of collateral material, someone going through some sort of online event, a Facebook Live, a Zoom party, etc., having a real results party, an in-home type of event, a market party, a sit-down, and a three-way call. So there's 8 different types of exposures that you can take someone through. What we noticed through the history of recruiting personally, that it took on average about 5 to 7 different exposures for someone to go through, eventually become a yes. And I think identifying that kind of sweet spot, a number, kind of the end zone, it really made it a lot easier for us to understand how far away, how close we were with some people, what we need to do, right? And taking them through more exposures, right? And not beating ourselves up on why hasn't this person signed up yet, when the fact of the matter is they're only at 3 or 4 exposures. They're not really down the football field and actually into the end zone. So I think giving people the knowledge that not only is there a process, but there's a kind of a definitive line that on average really is the sweet spot and where you got to get people to, makes it easier for people to then move people through the process and understand what happens in the process. Now, I put everybody on my tracker sheet. So even the people that just want to sample the product, people that have had interest in the business, everyone I put on my tracker sheet, because anybody has any interest in any element of the business could eventually become interested in the whole business, not just the product, right? Because I look at most brand partners, a higher percentage of brand partners were actually customers first. Most customers were people who just sampled the product first. And all samplers were at some point people that were not interested whatsoever. We are a spitting example of that. We were never interested in this industry, and we went through the entire cycle of the process, right? Which just shows you, as you get people more things to learn, hear, use, and experience, you can change and influence someone's perception from where it was to something totally different. I have a massive appreciation for this industry where if you rewind back 4 years ago, I wouldn't have gotten stuck my big toe anywhere near it, right? Just didn't know enough then, right? Now I know a lot more and have a different point of view. Our points of view change all the time. We're influenced by outside elements. So realize you're an outside element that can influence people's perception about this business, this industry, if you take them through enough of the process in these type of exposures, right? So we've identified a couple things. One, we put everyone on the tracker, right? Samples, anybody showing interest goes on the tracker, and I keep them regardless of how long we've been in that process for. I know it's going to take probably 5, 6, 7 exposures to get the average person to say yes and join the business. So those things that I know. The next element I think is important to know is I think a lot of people need to have a couple things answered in their head or things they need to get excited about throughout this process. And I'll list them out. So there's 3 in my brain that I know I would need to get excited about before I jump both feet in. Number 1, I need to know about the products or the services for that matter, right? Am I excited about the products and services? Do they actually work? So how do we conquer that? Well, we have the best thing where you can sample the product with product videos, you have literature and collateral information that talk about the ingredients, the improvements, etc. All those products do. So using that, those elements, those exposures will take someone through that experience and be able to get more people than not to come out and go, I love the products, I love what they do, right? So that's checkbox number 1. Number 2, which I think is a common area where most people miss, is showing people the upside of why having a secondary income is a very positive thing, right? Because I think most people, including myself, when we looked at it, the first things we thought of is this is going to cost us money, and this is time we don't have, right? I think a lot of people say and feel those same things because they've never looked at the other side of the coin and seen all the benefits that come with having a secondary income into the household, right? And I think people need to get more educated just in that area alone. Not talking about your specific opportunity or company, but just talking about the elements and positive benefits that come with that. Now, we're very fortunate because we have a great exposure tool in our Go Prospect back office app that is called Discovering Your Side Gig. And it's Ann Burleson interviewing the lady Susie, who is a renowned speaker, book writer, and talks all about side hustle and why it's growing and why all the positive, why so many people are getting into creating multiple sources of income, right? Doesn't really talk about Nerium at all. It's more just talking about the benefits. Well, I think that video is exactly fits that big spot that people are missing, that get people to change their point of view and look at that there is a little bit of money involved in getting going, and there is a little bit of time, but the wins that come out of it and the things that have value are so much greater than the small little investments that one has to make. You got to get people to see that, right? Well, that video does that. So everybody that goes through the process, I have them go through that video, right, and watch that interview because I think that checks off the second thing that most people need to come to grips with, that having a secondary income is actually more of a positive for their future than a negative, right? The third thing is, to me, is then why is Nerium the right opportunity for them? What are all the reasons that differentiate Nerium from other options for those that, for all the different things that are out there? Well, there's a lot of exposures that can cover those reasons, right? Whether it's a 3-way call, whether it's some sort of Facebook Live, whether it's a market party, a sit down, there's an incredible amount of exposures and tools that we as a brand partner can use to show why Nerium presents a great opportunity for people to fill that secondary income with something obviously is going to fit around their life, something they're going to enjoy and love to do, right? So how does this go into the tracker? Well, as I'm taking people through the 5 to 7 average exposures to get them to say yes, those are the things I'm also, as I'm taking through exposures, I'm making sure those exposures answer those 3 key areas. Do you like the product? Do you have an open mind towards the secondary income and all the perks that come with it? And why is Nerium obviously the best option out there for them, right? And so understanding those 5 to 7 exposures, it makes it very easy for me to hit the right exposures at the right time, answer the right areas, and move them through the process. Now, is there an order in what I do certain exposures? I think there's a typical trend, and not everything is absolute. Remember, these are averages. It doesn't mean everybody falls in all these numbers, but this is an overall average, right? So I think when you're dealing with most people in the beginning of the process, the exposure process, you're probably dealing with most people with very little interest or none at all, right? So I got to invite them to something that doesn't ask much of them. And to me, that's trying the product out. That's sampling, right? It's a low commitment out of a person. It's a small exposure, but it's one step into the process, right? So it's very easy to get people to try the product out or watch a quick video when it's only a couple minutes, even if they're not really all that interested. But it gets them one step into the exposure process, right? And then from there, yeah, besides sampling and videos and collateral material, which are easy things to hand share and let someone try, there's kind of another level of commitment of exposures that someone would potentially take, which would be maybe it's getting on a Zoom party or a Facebook Live, some sort of online thing where they've got to kind of show up at a specific time. And they got to put a little bit more time into learning and listening. So I think that takes a little bit more commitment of somebody. And typically, not always, typically would have to have some sort of interest before they even step into that series of exposures. So a lot of times they'll see people go from sampling process, and it's easy to get them onto some sort of Zoom or some sort of Facebook Live party. Then there's kind of a third level exposures, which to me ask a lot more of somebody. So asking someone to go to a market party, meet you for a cup of coffee, or get on a three-way call with somebody. To me, there has to be a higher level of curiosity and interest already created through other exposures previously to get someone successfully to get into those levels. Because those type of exposures to me are the exposures that are really kind of at the end of the road. They're exposures that typically will lead to an answer at this point, kind of yes or no, I want to do this, right? So I think there's kind of a progression. And I think as a brand partner, you have to realize that it's not your job to get someone to say yes to become a brand partner. What you have to learn how to get really good at doing is just kind of continuing to invite people to the next one, the next exposure, next exposure. So you're just going to be a great person at inviting and sharing things with people. You do have to be convincing somebody. You shouldn't have to convince anybody to do anything. If you share enough of the right information in the right order over a certain period of time, it's going to be very easy for people to then be able to come up with their own decision, having enough information at hand, right? So your job is to get the information to them and invite them and take them through that process, right? Now, a couple things that I get asked a lot is, when I share something with somebody and they kind of go quiet, right? Well, listen, first and foremost, no exposure is even worthwhile if you don't ever follow up on it, right? So you always got to follow up on every exposure that you do. Now, when you follow up, I really think there's kind of only two roads that people travel down, right? So when I follow up with somebody, I will follow up 1, 2, 3 times and get no answer before I finally go, okay, obviously they're kind of dodging the question for whatever reason. I don't know yet, right? But I got to shift, right? So the first thing that happens as they follow up is that someone doesn't respond back to you. And you've attempted to follow up maybe 2 or 3 times. I think you go over that, you're kind of being annoying, right? Now you're just pushing someone away. So if I don't get any type of response back on the sample, the video, the webinar, whatever they attended, and no type of feedback on that, then the first thing I'll do is after I've attempted to follow up 2 or 3 times, they stop talking about the exposure or Miriam. And I'll just kind of get off it, right? I'll get back to just trying to create more relationship, dialoguing, engaging with them about other things, right? Anything else non-Miriam related. I think one of the most important and influential exposures that's not on this list that people don't really value is your relationship with people. So when does that fit in? Well, it fits in throughout the entire process, but specifically fits in when you're going to follow up and they're not giving you any feedback, right? So then I just got to kind of lay off of it and get back to normal conversation for a while before I then try to invite them to another exposure, right? So that's a really key thing to do. Now, if you do follow up with somebody and they respond back to you and say, hey, I love the products, I love what they do, I thought the information was great, I'm looking at how many exposures they are in. And the next immediate knee-jerk thing to do is to share another exposure, take them one step closer, take them farther down the football field, right? So while they're interested, I want to keep feeding as much information. So if I got them and they're interested, I want to keep, hey, check this out, watch this, try this, I want you to come to this, listen to this, etc. I want to compress that time of excitement. If I can take 5 to 7 exposures and get it done in a week or 2, that's awesome. That's perfect, right? But I also think the key is you got to get those 5 to 7 down in some period of time, right? So when there's excitement, you can compress that time, move them from first base to second base to third base as quickly as you can. But if you don't get that feedback, then all that means is that there's not enough information. They're not that interested yet, right? So you got to slowly kind of work on how do I give them more information. A lot of times during the process, people say time and money. That's just a nice, in more cases not, that's just a nice thing that they're telling you to not hurt your feelings when it's funny. I'll say that in the beginning, but once you've taken them through 5 to 7 exposures, however much time down the road that takes, it's funny how I'm ready to do this and have no problem with time or money anymore, right? It just shows you that sometimes the reasons or excuses they give you early on, I chalk up as whatever. It doesn't matter to me because I'm looking at my sheet. They've only got 3 exposures. So I don't really take their reason of much value, because I know that they don't have enough information yet to really make a good decision yet. Well, let me get them 5, 6, 7 exposures, and then what they have to say, if it's not yes, probably has some true weight to it. There's some honesty behind that answer when they've had enough exposures, right? So remember, you got to follow up after every exposure, and there's 2 roads. Either they don't ever follow and engage back with you, get off Nerium, talk about non-Nerium stuff for a handful of weeks, get a good flowing conversation going, and then find another opportunity to invite them into something next, right? If they do engage you, can quickly move them to the next exposure, the next exposure, the next exposure. When you start to see this kind of flowing on your sheet and checking off what you're doing on the sheet, you will be able to look at your sheet and start kind of predicting and forecasting how many new brand partners that you're going to have over the next 30, 45, 60 days, just based on where they're at on your sheet, right? I think that's what makes it exciting, is that when you understand where there's a finish line, you really start to see how close you are with people. So I can look and go, I've got 4 people that are between 4 and 5 exposures that are literally 1 or 2 away from probably saying yes, right? I really want to work on those people. And everyone else, I want to move from their exposure 3 to 4, 2 to 3, etc. And so, I think the sheet not only helps you keep it all in one place, but I think it also really enlightens people to realize that there's not one thing you're going to do or say that's going to change someone's mind. It's a process. So just take them through that exposure process. And if you do that over and over again, it'll make a big difference, right? I think you'll start to see how much easier it is to just move people to the finish line. This worksheet, and just kind of looking back and reviewing our years of being in this industry, I think it was very easy for us to realize that you can honestly take someone from completely not interested to interested. And I say that with, I think, proof behind it, because anybody's watching this video, if you rewind back far enough in time, you could probably say at one point in time you would have never gotten in this industry. I know we would have said that ourselves too. And not only, obviously we're in it and we've been in it for a while and done well with it. So it's just a matter of how can you provide enough information over a period of time that will change people's point of view and give people a much more open look at what's going on to see if this could be a big benefit for them. So hopefully this tracker sheet can help you. You can obviously make your own, but if you need to find the tracker sheet, you can message me privately on Facebook Messenger, or you can go into the team page and look under the file section, and you can find the file section, and feel free to modify it how you want. I think the key of the tracker is to know that there's a process, that there's certain things you have to take people through, know that there's kind of an end zone of how many exposures it's going to take someone into that area where it's very easy to get the real answer. So hopefully this helps. Thanks so much for listening, and that's it. Bye, everybody.